Please read the warning. Good morning, class. Our topic is fluvial systems. We will focus our discussion on braided and meandering. My name is Dr. Sandra G. Catane. I'm your lecturer and teacher for these topics. Fluvial depositional systems are dominant conduit from areas of sediment production in the mountain range to sediment storage, oceans and basins. They are characterized by channel pattern, whether meandering, braided, or anastomosing. We will define these terms later in the discussion. Rivers are also characterized by sediment load. It could be bed load, suspended load, or mixed load. Bed load river consists mostly of coarse sand and gravel, and this type of river carry mostly bed load. Suspended load river, the sediment sources of some rivers are mainly clay, silt, and fine sand. The sediment load of such river is mainly suspended load. For mixed load rivers, many of these, both bed load and suspended load, are equally important. Such rivers are called mixed load rivers. The diagram on the right side of the slide is an illustration on the difference between particles in the bed load and suspended load. For river systems, it is mainly unidirectional mode of sediment dispersal. Channel pattern can be meandering, braided, or anastomosing. Braided rivers are characterized by interconnected, highly movable channels separated by bars or relatively short-lived islands. Braided rivers exhibit numerous channels that split off and rejoin each other to give a braided appearance. They are usually wide but shallow, typically form on fairly steep slopes, and carry large amount of coarse-grained sediments. Additionally, the water discharges tend to be highly variable. For meandering rivers, they flow over gently sloping ground, begin to curve back and forth across a landscape. These are called meandering rivers. In contrast to braided rivers, meandering rivers typically only contain one channel that winds its way across the floodplain. Meandering rivers erode sediment from the outer curve of each meander bend and deposit on the inner curve further downstream. Anastomosing rivers typically consist of network of low gradient, deep channels with stable banks, in contrast to braided river systems which form on steep gradients and display less bank stability. Grain size and the sedimentary structures are determined by the following factors: sediment supply, gradient of the river, total discharge, and seasonal variations in flow. Properties of meandering versus braided streams. Meandering and braided streams are compared by characteristics such as discharge, load, bank erodibility, bank composition, bank vegetation, channel gradient, ratio of width and depth. For example, meandering streams have more stable discharge but high bed load in braided streams. Meandering and braided stream are compared using bed load width and depth ratio, gradient and sinuosity. For example, width and depth ratio is high in braided but low in meandering stream. By the way, sinuosity is the ratio of stream length to valley length. The channel length divided by valley length as defined by Allen in 1970. Braided fluvial systems. An interlacing network of branching and reuniting shallow channels separated from each other by islands or mid-channel bars. They have normally insufficient discharge to carry its sediment load. So normally the supply of sediment is too much. Typically found in the upper reaches of a fluvial system, they are characterized by steep gradients, abundant coarse sediments, namely sand and gravel, rapid discharge fluctuations. They are typically wide and shallow during the slack water stages. Typical braided system characterized by interlacing network of shallow channels. Channels within a braided network are separated by mid-channel bars. Could be longitudinal bars, transverse bars, and lateral bar. Transverse bar are tend to be elongate along the axis of the channel. Transverse bar are wider than they are longer and spread across the channel. Lateral bar is that accretion along the sides of the river channel. Differences of sequence of deposits in the different mid-channel bars may be difficult to discriminate from each other. Main morphological features of a braided channel. These include the channel, mid-channel bars, sometimes they are vegetated, floodplain, deposits or channel bars, and overbank deposit forming floodplains. Movement of bed load occurs mainly at high flow stages when the bars are submerged in water. Sediment is brought downstream to a bar by river flow and erosion on the upstream side of the bar. In bars composed of gravelly materials, the clasts accumulate as inclined parallel layers, which can be observed as imbrication, especially on the downstream bar faces. You can also have lateral accretion. Depositional architecture of a braided river. With time, bars continue to migrate until the channel moves sideways, leaving the bar out of the main flow of the water, and it will be subsequently covered by overbank deposits or the bars of another channel. Graphic sedimentary log of braided river deposits. The base is characterized by a surface of erosion. It's a scarred base, which represents the base of the channel. Channel fill succession, it has an overall finding upward sequence with thickness generally representing the depth of the original channel if you find it complete. Overlying the channel fill are overbank muds and sands with soil and roots. The following two slides shows the diagnostic features of braided fluvial systems, and I underscored the important ideas in its category. For example, braided systems occur in the upper reaches of alluvial plains. They are associated with rapidly down-dropping basins. In terms of geometry, they are elongate, fairly straight, lenticular. These bodies grade laterally to finer grain deposits of an alluvial plain. You can find the typical sequence to be a fining upward sequence of channel log gravels with a lot of tough cross-bedded sand deposits, and these are mostly filling the channels. And the sequence is stopped by vertically accreted laminated sand and mud, including burrows and root casts. Unlike meandering rivers, braided streams are ephemerally and rapidly shifting. To continue, in terms of sedimentology, gravel is more common in longitudinal bars, especially in the upper reaches of the system. Sand is dominant throughout, and there is very little silt and mud. There is an abundant tabular trough cross stratification, but for longitudinal bars, sometimes you find high flow velocity plain beds. In terms of fossils, braided systems are usually unfoliciferous or lack of fossils. But you find roots, root casts, burrows, especially in the floodplains. Meandering rivers develop via erosion of the bank closest to the talweg and the position on the opposite side of the channel where the flow is sluggish and the bed load can no longer be transported. The talweg of extreme marks the line of maximum depth and flow velocity and wanders from bank to bank. Inertial flows are fastest against the outer part of the curve. This outer bank experiences erosion. The inner bank here, the quietest waters accumulate. This deposit sediment in a point bar. The net result of erosion on the outer bank and deposition in the inner bank is for the channel to migrate to the direction of the outer bank. In map view, the result is a river that meanders in a series of broad loops. These are point bars on the inside side or inside bend of a meandering river. The deposits of a meander bend have a characteristic profile of coarser materials at the base and becoming progressively finer up the inner bank. Sedimentary structures can be observed that includes cross-bedding, cross-lamination, to formation of ripples and dunes in the area. A point bar sequence, each package of sediment deposited at the point bar form a dipping drape of sediment over the earlier point bar. Coarser clasts accumulate at the bottom, while finer ones are at the top. A boring through a point bar therefore shows a fining upward sequence. The uppermost portions show features characteristic of shallower water, such as ripples. Because it is deposited by a moving flow, nothing finer than sand occurs. This typical sequence makes a channel deposit easy to identify in morphological features of a meandering river. Features are the channel, cut bank, levee, point bar, and crevasse play. In section, we can see the channel deposits, lateral accretions that are dipping inside the channel, and overbank deposits. Lateral accretion surface, the dashed black lines here, is a manifestation when low discharge allowing fine sediments to be deposited on the point bar surfaces. Lateral accretion, which is perpendicular to the flow direction, produces epsilon cross bedding. This animation shows drastically a river can change its course over a span of 25 or 28 years. This slide shows a highly meandering river or a mature river. And this shows the formation of oxbow lakes. Erosion takes place to make the neck narrow. During floods, the river takes its shorter course through the neck. And then new straighter river course is established. The cut-off or abandoned meander forms an oxbow lake. Slide shows the numerous oxbow lakes related to the abandonment of meanders in this highly shifting meandering system. Floodplain deposition. The figure shows how natural levees are built. A, before flood, during flood, and after many floods. A levee is a natural or artificial embankment or dike at the margins of a river channel. Natural levees are formed by a deposition of sediments by overflows during floods. For an artificial levee, the main purpose of constructing these levees is to prevent flooding of the adjoining areas. However, they also confine the flow of the river, resulting in higher and faster water flow. A levee is lenticular in 3 dimensions. Outwards, beyond the levees, floodplain deposits, including crevasse play deposits, are formed. Crevasse play are usually fan-shaped in plan view. This is the crevasse play. They are formed by breaching of the levee during floods. This is a dramatic overview of a newly formed crevasse play. Breaching of the levee may develop into new channels and therefore may lead to avulsion. Floodplain sediments. Normally they are thin, very thin beds of normally graded sand to mud. And there is evidence of initial rapid flow, which lead to the formation of plain parallel lamination. But they quickly transform to waning and accompanied by rapid deposition, which is evidenced by the presence of climbing ripples. They deposit thin sheets of sediment, few centimeters thick, that extend tens to hundreds of meters. In this area, you have also soil formation, or sometimes you get remnants of vegetation like roots or leaf impressions. And there are also features of indicating subaerial exposure like deformation of soil. The positional architecture of meandering river. Here you can see the active channel. This is a potential point of avulsion, and this is the abandoned channel due to the shifting of the river. And you have here also Oxbow Lake, which is a product of abandonment of meander bends. And this is the floodplain. In cross-section, you can see channel fill sands and fine-grained overbank deposits. Meandering fluvial architecture. In a meandering river, features include the channel, point bar, back swamp, crevasse play, oxbow lakes, and natural levee. Clay plugs are also common. These are fine-grained sediments usually made up of clay with high organic content deposited in a cut-off river meander. This is a graphic sedimentary log of meandering river deposits. At the base is marked by erosional surface. This is also the scarred base of the channel, and it corresponds to the bed of the channel. And on top of the channel, it's filled with channel fill successions, which are cross-bedded. And also you see lateral accretion surfaces with crossbeds. On top are overbank muds, and these sands have soil and roots. These are the typical floodplain deposits. Next are outcrop examples. This is a point bar deposit. Point bar deposits of a meandering river laterally migrating to the left, as you can see. This one is a channel fill sandstone body incised by overbank deposits or floodplain deposit. It appears that the sandstone is coarser than the underlying overbank deposits. Notice also the erosional surface in the photo. Here are some overbank deposits that are fine-grained. These are muds. However, these are also overbank deposits, but they are made up of fine sand to silt. Organic activity on alluvial plains contribute to soil formation or paleosols in the stratigraphic record. Next two slides summarizes the diagnostic features of meandering fluvial systems. I underlined the important informations, like they are associated with down-dropping basins, especially in aggrading coastal sequences. They are associated with floodplains and muds and lake deposits. In terms of geometry, they form long ribbon-like bodies of sands or shoestring sands. Typical sequence is finding upwards from the basal channel lag gravel to sandy point bar sequence. Structure is made up of plain beds or trough cross beds. Sometimes you have ripples. Unlike braided systems, meandering systems have a much larger fine-grained component, like laminated sands formed in oxbow lakes, levees, crevasse plays, and plain. To continue, in terms of sedimentology, channel lag gravels to floodplain sands, we have this grain sizes range. Sometimes you have structures showing decrease in flow velocity, like plain beds changing to trough crossbeds and ripple cross lamination. Floodplain muds are finely laminated, and normally you have mud cracks, raindrop impressions, soil horizons, organic matter, and some fossils. Organic matter and fossils like wood are common, particularly in floodplains. That ends our lecture for Fluvial. Please read again the warning. Thank you for listening.